Hi and welcome to another video by the Aussie Ideas Man. Once again, I'm going to feature the Cretin from Aptera Owners Club. This time, I'm just going to highlight why I think he is just agreeable to everybody to the point that he is proving he is absolutely gullible. This guy, you can tell him anything and he'll go, yes, yes, I believe it. He can't think. Anyway, this is going to be long. The video that I take as my example is super long, and I don't want to be too long, so I've chopped it a great deal. And so I would recommend you watch the whole video and just take note of how much palavering this Brett guy does. He is an absolute BSA, a bull artist, and the cretin just swallows it all up. So I'm going to just try and highlight a couple of places where this appears to be self-evident in how he talks. But there's a lot more that he just rants and raves and, sells snake oil every bit as well as Chris Anthony does. I'll try to be brief when I stop it.
All right, welcome everyone. It's Steve with Aptera Owners Club. I'm joined by Brett Belen. Is that your last name?
Beelan.
Brett Beelen. Brett Beelen is the founder and owner of a company called Solarrolla, which one of you guys told me about it. And so I checked them out and I thought they were doing some really cool stuff. And so I invited Brett to come onto our channel and kind of tell us a little bit about him and how this whole thing started. So welcome, Brett.
So yeah, it started with a golf cart.
Uh-huh.
It turned into a VW bus. I put 1,200 watts of solar up there. So I could pull about 30 miles on a good day.
I'll just stop and say you can pull 30 miles on this 1200 watts of solar. The VW bus is a brick and it weighs, I don't know, considerably more than an Aptera. So all of Aptera's saying they can get only up to 40 miles, and they can only do it because it has to be the most aerodynamic and light shape and size to achieve it. They even say that normal cars have abandoned the concept because it's just not viable for them. And yet this guy just throws 1,200 watts of solar on a large brick, and 30 miles is what he can get. I think later he makes it more than that, much more.
Which was huge. So that underneath right there is the bus we built for Redfoo, which, was Model S modules. So it was pretty amazing change from lead batteries, of course. And we built the array just with thin film solar that I framed up. And that vehicle could pull, it would almost full charge. So at about 90 to 100 miles of full charge, I could just about charge that up in one day. So that was getting up in the, 70, 80, and 90 miles of solar harvest per day.
There you go, 70, 80, and 90 miles of solar harvest per day. Jumped up from 30 quite quickly. And once again, it's still the brick of a Volkswagen with some slight modifications from the first, lithium-ion batteries instead of lead-acid batteries.
Which was pretty cool.
Okay.
But as my family grew, we decided that, hey, we got to start looking at larger vehicles. So we just finished a trip out to deliver Redfoo a solar-powered Navistar E-Stars. So there's, I guess I forgot that vehicle there, but the one in between. But yeah, Redfoo's was pretty amazing. It was kind of something that we wanted to build for ourselves, and that's kind of our business model. We want this particular vehicle. We want it to do this and that and the other. We start building it. Someone jumps in, they take the project over, and we end up kind of customizing it and building it for them.
So going back to this, the very first thing, the golf cart. Did you just like buy a used golf cart someplace, and then how did you you knew about solar panels? You like got a charge controller and just like hooked it up, or?
Yeah, I did an engineering degree.
I put this little note to myself in because I didn't want to miss this bit. He rants for a long, long time, and you'll have to watch the original to get it all because I've taken it out. But he got asked about the golf cart, and in all of that starts with going, yes, I got an engineering degree, and never talked anything about the golf cart. Never answered the question. This is also something you can look for if you watch the full video because this guy doesn't answer questions. He's worse than Chris Anthony and politicians on that level.
But what I've done since, because I went to lithium batteries even in that vehicle. But what I did was the same thing I did on the Route del Sol E-Star, which is have a secondary, like a house battery.
Yeah.
So then your solar panels can charge that battery. and then you can transfer that. You can either use that, for your appliances or whatever, but you can also transfer that into the main pack. So there is some losses because you're going through a couple components, so it's not
Right.
ideal.
Uh-huh.
Red fuse went directly into the main pack. So 300 volts of solar down into 300 volts of battery. However, with the VW bus, the AC chargers that I use, the Thunderstruck motors, 2500 watt AC chargers would also take DC. So what I did was I just built a little 110 volt battery pack, charged that with the panels, and then I had it all automated. So, it would just transfer. So it was a DC to DC transfer. So it wasn't too bad.
Right.
But definitely with the Route del Sol vehicle, we had, solar panel, charge controller, secondary pack, inverter, EV SE. So there's quite a few links in that chain, and that means losses. But
Right.
for people that, they have an already, production EV, it's a really easy way to get power in. You just charge a secondary battery and you get losses, but you don't have to, right now the cars don't have a MPPT input. So hopefully that'll come soon.
I kept all of that nonsense in. It flies in the face of what Aptera is doing because Aptera hasn't got what they call a house battery or a secondary battery. I kept all of that nonsense in just because he gets to the point where he says EVs don't have MMPTs on them. And if you listen later, I'm not an expert and I'm easily confused by somebody waffling so long. But later on, I picked up on the fact that he's saying that EVs have MMPTs. So listen out.
But until they do, you got that secondary pack.
Now, do any of your vehicles like charge as they're driving?
Yeah, so definitely they charge as you're driving. Now, the Route del Sol vehicle wouldn't charge the main pack as you were driving, would charge the house battery as you're driving, but all the other vehicles will charge the traction pack while you're driving, which is nice because, solar panels will put out a little bit more power when they're cooler. So they're getting air cooled as you're cruising, which is kind of nice. You see a little bit more power coming out of them.
Now, when I talked to Aptera, they were saying that one of the issues they were trying to deal with is as you drive, there's a lot of like shading and they go through trees and building the shade and stuff, and that would like do some. I didn't quite understand it, but it would do something to the solar panels so they would not charge as efficiently.
Yeah, it's definitely, well, you have to track the power point of those panels or you don't get the most out of them, and it'd be, it would take some pretty fast tracking if you're doing 55 miles an hour and a tree passes over the top. It's going to take a little bit of time to catch up.
Yeah. Okay, so this is your most recent vehicle that you guys finished, right?
Correct.
And this one you said it goes directly to the battery?
So the top panel goes directly to the battery.
Okay. Now, did you guys change out the battery in this thing? Because I think the stock battery in this thing doesn't have that much range.
Yeah, the stock battery was an 80 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate pack, A123 pouch cells. And we put 200 kilowatt hours of Tesla Model 3 batteries in there. So 3 Model 3 packs in there.
Okay.
We used 3 Model 3 packs, so 12 total modules, but we arranged them 1 large module and 2 short modules. So just under 300 volts.
This VW Bug that you made, the very first one, that one you said was a 1200 watt system?
First of all, it's not a VW Bug. That's a combi van. I don't know what they call it in America, but the Bug was like Herbie, totally different.
Yeah, the very first one had
this one
4 300 watt panels.
Yeah, so this was a 1200 watt system, and you got about 30 miles on a good day.
Right. Yeah.
So when you hear, like, did you know about Aptera before I contacted you? Had you heard of it before? Okay. Yeah, so it was not new to you.
No.
So their claim that they can get about 30 to 40 miles off a 700 watt system with a super light aerodynamic vehicle, that doesn't seem crazy to you.
Once again, he's got a long pause before he starts, and then he doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, It's I don't know if you've ever remember that company Lightyear.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Dutch
Oh, yeah.
kids were doing that.
Yep.
We were talking a little bit back in the, way back when, I mean, just a few years ago, I guess. But they were also kind of went that direction of really lightweight.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I don't really rate my vehicles based on any standards,
Hmm.
except, hey, here's what I got when I went cruising down the road.
Right.
Well, I don't have a track where I go around in circles and then say, okay, here's the watt hours per mile.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, if you're going up hills from this place to that place, you're going to get that.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, that's one thing I'm really proud about our company is that we've seen these numbers. We're
Uh-huh.
able to say we're not speculating what you're going to get. We see what you're going to get. We can tell you what you're going to get. We can tell you what you're going to get based on the seasons of the year,
Hmm.
based on, when you're climbing and what your regen is going to look like. And it's a little different in the world when you're out there in a headwind
Yeah.
and and the sun, of course, you got partly cloudy, you got full sun, you've got winter sun. I mean, there's so many variables that it's almost easier to explain instead of by the math, just by the experience.
Mm. Hmm.
Like, here's what we got from here to here. Like Red Foo's vehicle, unfortunately, we went a little bit over deadline,
Uh-huh.
and so we just needed to deliver it. I did a bunch of testing along the way. I had things to replace. I didn't get a lot of time to solar charge, so we went kind of RV park to RV park, which was really fun too. You
Uh-huh.
just charge up at night, leave in the morning, and see some beautiful spots. But we only really had one opportunity to take the time and do a solar charge. And it's like, yeah, I pulled 41 miles. I think I had a sun until about 1 o'clock that day. It was obviously December. So I still pulled 41 miles,
Uh-huh.
which
Seems like a
there
lot.
you go. I mean, if it
Yeah.
was a sunny day and I had, another 4 or 5 hours of sun, six, whatever, I would have been, 50, 60, 70 miles. So,
So this is midwinter with the morning to pull 41 miles because it was no more sun in the afternoon. This guy really stretches it.
it's also like the Route del Sol vehicle. So there's another E-Star, the blue one. We
Uh-huh.
put this Australian kid out there, Joel Hayes, um, cool guy, part of the family. Um, and Joel was, telling me that he
This
was
guy.
always charged before he was ready to go.
Uh-huh.
He'd be surfing. He was surfing. He was playing music. He was having a good time and connecting with people and doing some good stuff. But he was like, you usually when you're traveling, you want to spend a couple days somewhere anyway.
Yeah.
It's a couple days. It's a couple 3 days is like minimum.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
that period of time, you're ready to go another 200 miles.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people, so you guys are selling these things, can you tell me like what the ballpark price range? I'm sure it's very
Yeah,
different based on
sure.
what people want and stuff.
I'm going to stop and look at this. Now, I've made myself a text strip there because I know for a fact things are going this fast. I can't think of things to say. So, along the text strip, I will add stuff that I've left out verbally that might make things a little more clear. But as it is, I'm going to have a quick look at these specifications because I'm looking at a range of 200 miles for something that's got a 200 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery in it. Now, that to me shows that he's got a highly inefficient vehicle. He has got lots of peak power. Usually, the more power there is in an engine, the less efficient it becomes. Certainly, the more weight in a vehicle, the less efficient it becomes. And it really comes out that you've got 200 miles for 200 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is a mile per kilowatt hour. But in either case, the first thing I can think of is solar charge time, 0 to 200 miles, 2 to 3 sunny days. That's that 60 kilowatt hours that he talks about later. I've watched this already. 60 kilowatt hours per day on good day. How does that compare? Now I'm going to have to leave most of this to after I talk. Things just don't look right. Looking down further, charge time 0 to 200 miles, 16 hours overnight. The only thing I can think of, because it's not the same as solar charge time, 0 to 200 miles, 2 to 3 sunny days, is that charge time is if you're at a plug, you're plugged in 16 hours overnight. Most nights don't last 16 hours at all. But the other thing is, why do you have to have it overnight at all? 16 hours anytime. It's just the charge speed, 8.5 kilowatt AC. I'll work that out and put it in the text strip. Moving on.
Yeah, we don't make much money because if we were going to actually make some money, it would be too expensive,
Yeah.
you know? And because, even like, for example, the used Tesla modules for Red Foods were 50 grand,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like, all right, you grab a UQM motor and controller, there's another 10, and so you get up to 100 grand in parts real fast.
I see.
So, if I'm going to spend a year building it, 6 months to a year, family of 4, I
Yeah.
try to make 100 grand. It never ends up that, because by the time I deliver it, oh, I got to add this, and oh, I got to add that, and oh, they wanted to change this. So I'm barely squeaking by.
So probably around 200K for one of these vans that are solar.
Yeah, I was wondering where my rambling took me away from. So back to the cost. A lot of people have been asking lately, and right now what we're building,
Uh-huh.
we're trying to get the cost down.
Uh-huh.
Red Food's rig was the ultimate. As
Uh-huh.
many batteries as I could get in there, and we're still tweaking on it. So by the time we're done, he'll probably have upwards 250 miles of range,
Uh-huh.
and be able to pull a solid 100 miles a day off the sun.
Uh-huh.
That vehicle right there, that was the Route del Sol vehicle. I think that day we pulled 60 kilowatt hours.
Yeah,
So
that's what it says.
driving, moderate to low watt hours per mile, it's 100 miles.
Uh-huh.
So that was pretty cool. But so, like I said, we're building a base model. So we're going to use the original E-Star motor and drivetrain. Usually I build the entire drivetrain. We're going to use the original E-Star drivetrain. I'm going to do a different controller and a different battery, but we're going to keep the battery small, 100 miles of range. We're just going to put the single layer on top for 1680 watts. So, but we're hoping to come in around 120 for that vehicle. These vehicles have an ROI.
Uh-huh. What do you mean by that?
It may be 20 years.
Uh-huh.
It may be 10 years, depending on how diligent you are about getting your panels in the sun and how you're driving, and of course the gas prices.
Right.
But the alternative energy thing, it seems to always be a big upfront cost, right?
Right.
Put your solar panels even on your house, and it's like, wow, I'm out, 30 grand.
I left that in because of that mentioning put your solar panels on your house and you're out 30 grand, $30,000 US. Now, must be pretty expensive in America, because 4 years ago when I moved house, I put on a 6.5 kilowatt system. It cost me under 4,000 Australian dollars, which is more like, I don't know, if you want to check, use a calculator, but I'm thinking something like 2.5, 3 at best, thousand US dollars, or less than a tenth of apparently what everybody in America seems to be putting on their roof. 30 grand worth. When you hear people talk like that, you know they're BSAs, which is all artists, okay? And my point is, as you watch the whole video, the cretin just goes, yeah, 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 all the time, when he should be pulling him up and saying, hey, this doesn't quite add up. How about you explain it in some more detail? He's a gullible fool. He just swallows the snake oil. You would have to be one of the biggest gullible fools around to interview in the manner that he interviews.
But, 5-10 years of not paying electric bills. And let me stress again, we're only assuming that the electricity is not going to go up in price.
Right.
When
and
we
of
do
course
the
it
calculations.
will. Yeah.
But let's face it, it's gonna.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So, panels are going to last. The battery technology, man, I'm finally over that hump. I've always felt like that was the weak link. I don't feel that way anymore. When you're looking at the BYD cells, when you're looking at, no thermal runaway issues, you're looking at, thousands of cycles. It's crazy. It's wonderful, because that used to be the weak link, and now they're getting, in my opinion, about as reliable as solar panels.
So here's also something that's absolute nonsense. Batteries are still a weak link. Batteries have got a long way to go before they are viable. But then he says, but also solar panels are a weak link. When they're pulling only around 20% of the available power, it's a weak link. If they could pull far more than 20%, the link would be stronger. But there's 80% that's not available to them. So there you have it. In reality, both solar and batteries are weak links and remain weak links. But when you sell snake oil, you pretend that there's no problem.
So
Mm.
you're talking about a forever vehicle. You
Yeah.
know, if it's done right, and that's my goal, is to put out a forever vehicle, something that's just, because the thing with the lithium batteries, if you don't charge them all the way up and you don't bring them all the way down, their lifetime goes up exponentially.
Yeah.
So get down and start crunching your numbers and figure out how to make that battery pack last for you for the rest of your life, and drive it accordingly and watch, and don't just look at the green line that says empty and full. Look at your battery voltages,
Mhm.
see what's going on. Look at your battery temperatures, yeah.
Have you noticed, like, so you're using like thin films on these now because they're otherwise it'd just be way too heavy.
Like I said, I'm kind of going the opposite direction of Aptera and what Lightyear was, which is let's build the most light aerodynamic. For
Hmm.
me, it's like the bigger, the more solar I can get on it,
Hmm.
the more batteries I can haul,
Uh-huh.
and the more it's like a power station. And then the light leaf panels, I don't know if you've heard of the company. This is what we use on Redfood's rig. They're
No.
carbon fiber. They're really awesome. They're carbon fiber backed panels that they could make them in the curves that you want. Yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting because Aptera say they're the only ones that can make panels in curves. This guy's saying he knows of somebody that makes panels in curves that are actually carbon fibre backed. So that might be even better than what Aptera are doing. What's the backing for Aptera's curved panels? I have not heard it being carbon fibre. There's something wrong here because the way Aptera talk, they talk as if they've got a market that nobody else has. And this guy's talking like somebody's already there with something lighter.
Right there. So those are super lightweight, super strong, expensive.
Uh-huh.
So
Now, do you
we're
worry about the longevity of these panels when they're like being vibrated on?
I don't,
Uh-huh.
and I used to, but as
Hmm.
time has gone on, and these vehicles, like for example, Redfood's golf cart, which I did 5 years ago, he's never had to charge it.
Uh-huh.
There's 400-watt thin film panels. They look awful. They're all oxidized. They put out 90% of rated power. A megawatt of power, and then just getting more solar. And what I've learned with the solar is it's not weight and volume prohibitive.
And here we go again. Automakers, ever since photovoltaics were invented, have dismissed the idea of putting solar on moving vehicles. And they do it because it's both weight and area prohibitive. So, what this guy is saying, he slips it out very quickly. But what he says lies in the face of what every automaker has studied and determined that solar power is both weight and area prohibitive.
In other words, if you use thin film, you use the
Mhm.
light leaf panels, you're going to you add another 200 pounds to a, 15,000-pound vehicle. It's relatively negligible.
Yeah, yeah.
200 pounds on a 15,000 pound vehicle might be negligible, but the 200 pounds has to move the 15,000 pounds, and that becomes too tall an order.
You just start
You could live there.
terraforming.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
start, because you can pull water out of the air.
Right.
The technology to extract water from air is known, but the problem is, and he doesn't say it, is that the amount of water that you can extract is insufficient for even one person to clean their teeth with in a week. I may be exaggerating there, but the BSA that he gives doesn't say how much. He just says it can be done. And it's where the amount of water in the time it takes to extract it is insufficient for the people in the camper over the time that they're camping.
You can run your dehumidifier, and even in the desert, you can eventually pull some water out of the air,
Yeah.
your AC unit that you're going to be running anyway.
Yeah.
So you have the capability of taking that energy and turning it into whatever you want.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. Going back to the Aptera, it's got 700 watts built in, but they've
Right,
always said that their charge controller can handle much more than 700 watts,
right,
like maybe 2,000 watts or 3,000
right.
watts. And a lot of us are interested in doing, camping with the Aptera, but not, obviously not like this, but like, driving it someplace,
Sure.
setting up for a few days. And
Yeah,
it'd be nice to have like a solar panel that you could just deploy out there
right.
and have it charge. But Aptera is not putting that out there, but they're saying, hey, if someone has the know-how, they could hook into our charger. Like, how
Nice.
hard do
Yeah.
you
So
think
that's
that would be If you were given the schematics and like the specs for it, and which ports do what, would that be something fairly easy to do?
Yeah, it would be, because the MPPT controllers, they take a wide range of input.
So there you have it. He just is now saying that these MPPT controllers can do the job. To me, now I'm no expert, but that first time that he mentioned them, I thought they weren't available for EVs. And now he's going, yep, MPPT controllers can do it. Just seems at odds with each other.
So as long as you stay within that input, it's going to convert it down to exactly the voltage that the battery is and wants to see, and track the panel's sweet spot, and yeah, make it worth your while. So you just want to make sure that you're within voltage and wattage range. But if you want to say at your home, you got your Aptera, and you put a little array on your garage,
Yeah.
or God forbid, I've built small arrays for people with small EVs. It's like, why not? I mean, get a little bit more power when you're at home. I don't know how it would be to carry more solar on an Aptera. I don't know the vehicle that well to know if there's any room to really.
I don't think you could mount it, but I think we're like thinking you could just like stash it in the hatch and
have some
something
100-watt flexible panels. Sure.
Yeah, like a couple 100 watts of extra panels that you just put out there and use it set up like a pop-up tent or something and put it on top of there.
Yeah.
And then but what we didn't want to do is one of the guys I interviewed earlier was running this company called GoSun, and he has basically like a small battery that the solar panels charge, and then he's got an inverter, and it just basically turns it into AC, and then you just plug that into the EVSE.
Right.
And so you have a lot of conversion losses. But since like Aptera has a solar controller, it would be nice if you could just plug directly into that and have it just charge better. And I think like if someone were to develop that and this whole Aptera thing does take off, there'd be a pretty decent market for that.
Oh, for sure.
Like I would certainly buy it for sure.